Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode number 77 of Into the Fire, coming to you live from Tulsa, Oklahoma. What a week. It's great to be here. I'm so glad today is Friday. You have no idea. I'm very excited. Today is Friday, December the 12th, 2025. We've got an extraordinary guest, Dr. Teresa White. She goes by Lily, and we're not related, but I do like the name. That's great. We're not related that I know of, but you never know down the line. She's from Montana. How cool is that? I could have got a local forensic anthropologist from here, but no, I'm not going to go local. I'm going to go big time. I'm going to go to the big sky country to bring on somebody that's really epic. And let me turn that off. My monitor here, my little alarm. So welcome everybody. It's good to be here. And hopefully everybody's getting closer and closer to the Christmas spirit. I didn't mention this the last week. I kind of wanted to mention something real quick, or I did mention something. I wanted to mention about a few books that I thought would be really good reads, that I had a stack of them sitting here on my table, and I meant to mention them. And a few books. This is my go-to all-time favorite, Helter Skelter by Vincent Bugliosi. If you're into true crime books, it's the number one book in my opinion. And then some other Manson type books, which this is a member of the family by Diane, also known as Snake, but Diane Lake. I'm trying to get her on. I've actually wrote her publisher and the person that co-wrote this book, and I haven't heard back yet, but I'm trying to get her on. How cool would that be? And then this one here, which is a really fascinating book, and this one's. I think this is out of print and it's really expensive, but you can still kind of find them around. And it's co-written, I think, by Charles Tex Watson. Really interesting account of the Manson murders from his words. There's a book that came out recently. If you like reading the dictionary, then I would recommend this one. To tell you the truth, I wasn't that crazy about it. First of all, the print is way too small for me, but that's that. I also wanted to mention another book that I told Kathy Kleiner Rubin, one of Ted Bundy's victims from the Chi Omega sorority house. I was messaging her today, and I told Kathy, I said, Kathy, I'm gonna tell people, check out her book. She just had this published, and she's great, and I love Kathy, and I want her to sell a bunch of books. So look for it. And she's a serial survivor. That's what she calls herself, and I love it. And so it's a good book. So check it out. There's nothing like talking about getting some murder books right around Christmas time, right? But as a homicide guy, that's what I do. So the other thing I wanted to mention too, for those of you, and I'm going to make another mention of this, for those of you that live in the Tulsa or Northeast Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas, Texas, I will tell you there's a couple of people that are flying in from Hawaii for this, believe it or not. I can't believe it, but they are. And I know that there's a couple coming from south of Oklahoma in Texas. But I'll be speaking at the Jewish Center in Tulsa, January the 23rd. There's the thing. I've got a link up on my Detective Jason White Facebook page. Everything, when you see that general admission is $25, let me tell you something. I'm not getting a dime of this. 100% of this is going to the museum effort. The Tulsa Police Department and the retired group of officers from our organization, they are putting together from scratch a museum. And if you can't go to it, then maybe you'll find it in your heart. Send $1 or $5. There's a spot on there. I don't have any connection to that whatsoever, but there is a spot on there that you could throw them a donation. And if you do decide to show up, we're going to be going from 5 o'clock. The doors open. There'll be a meet and greet. I'll sign stuff for you. I'll take photos. All that stuff. I'll do all of that. And then we'll get going at 6 o'clock straight up. No kids. It's got to be 18 and up. I show real life stuff. So we can't have a kid showing up and people freaking out. So it's 18 and up. I promise you will be blown away. It's fantastic. And like I said, check out my Detective Jason White Facebook page. And then in addition to that, and finally, before we get to her bio, check out my TikTok. Amanda, throw those QR codes up there if you don't mind, if you can find them. That's for, I think that's for my Instagram page. All you got to do is click a picture on that and follow that Instagram page. I put different things up on each one of those, and that's my TikTok one. And don't worry, I'm not going to be doing anything really stupid on there or anything like that. I still work in this business, so I have to be careful. But I do like to put fun videos up there and interesting stuff. And you never know what you're going to see in the near future. So actually, Reggie Warren, the guy that I work with, he's like, hey, my buddy up in Chicago, he said, you put some video up there. And I said, yeah, I did. And I'm just having fun in life. So just, if you don't like it, turn that channel. And he didn't say he didn't like it, but believe me, when you work with a bunch of cops, trust me. Good. I appreciate you being there, Amanda. That's great. I want to see you. And that's not Amanda from Canada. That's Amanda from somewhere else. So I would love to have you there. I'd love to see, I see Steph's in the house. I see a lot of other people. Darren, my cousin from Washington State's here, and a lot of other people. So good. Let's get to this. I don't want to waste any more of this brilliant anthropologist's time. Just is really exciting for me because it just really is pretty exciting. I got to get to her bio here because I had to switch something up before we got going here. And we're going to have fun. We're going to go for about an hour and 10 minutes or something like that, or a little longer or less, who knows, depending upon what she wants to do. And hopefully you guys are going to have a lot of questions and so forth. This is fun. This is somebody that deals in bones, and that's always really, really interesting to me. And so give me a quick second. I'm sorry. I'm trying to think if I'm going to be anywhere else. I'll be in Durant, Oklahoma at the casino. I'm going to be all over the place. So I don't even remember all the different places that I'm going to be. I'm going to be in a lot of different places, and it's going to be a ton of fun. I know that. So sorry, I had to reboot. So that's why I'm coming into a little bit of a problem here. Sorry. Yeah, we'll get to it here in a minute. I can't find it. Let's just bring her on. Hey, Teresa, come on right quick and just tell us about yourself. I'm sorry, I had that pulled up before.
That's okay.
God.
That's okay. That's okay. Let's see. Before I start, I posted this introduction on my Facebook. And it's funny because my husband, Stocky, who is sitting directly behind me, a couple of our friends that were posting different things on Facebook, they said, we're going to need to see Stocky. His name is Samuel Stockton White, the fifth, but we call him Stocky. But they said, he's been a little scarce and we haven't seen him. And knowing your occupation,
wanted to make sure I'm not that skeleton over there.
Yes.
So I'm alive and well.
Yes. So this is a welfare check. And
Good.
So this is proof of life and a welfare check. Welcome, Dr. White, someone said. Sally. Thanks, Sally.
Thanks.
So he is alive and well and kicking and doing great. So he's alive.
Good.
So everybody's saying hi.
Well, thanks, you guys. Thank you, Jason, and take care, everyone.
Okay.
Yeah, and he's an archaeologist. So there's can you imagine the conversations that go on in their house? It'll be interesting. So very cool.
We're on a restaurant room pretty quick.
We can.
Well, listen, Teresa, or you go by Lily, so we'll call you Lily. Thank you so much, sir. Good to meet you. And like I said, everybody that's here, Danny, welcome. And I see a lot of other friendly faces or people's names. Kathleen, she's always, I love seeing her in here, and Carrie, etc. If you got questions, throw them up here. So tell me, how did you even end up getting interested in the world of anthropology?
Well, so I'll do a sort of condensed version. But I went to beauty school and I owned a salon for 20 years and sort of thought I would do hair for the rest of my life. But I got into a car accident I ran into, and it took me out of the hair business. And so the only thing that I had was a high school education and then the beauty school. So
I wanted to make sure I'm not that
whoops.
I haven't pulled that.
Oh, let me see.
That's okay. That's okay. Before we start, I posted this on my Facebook, and
Oh, I know what she did. I know what she did. She's checking that. She was probably watching her in the other room or something, or somebody was. So
Stock.
there
Can
you
you
go.
turn
We're
that
back.
off? Oh, all
It's
right.
okay. No, I don't blame him. I don't blame him. So you're watching it live in another room. That's okay. Just have him
Yeah.
turn it really far down. That's okay.
Yeah.
But good. No, he's interested.
Right. So anyway, I basically got in a car accident and thought, well, I have to go do something because I only had a high school education. So I went to college at sort of a non-traditional, went to college and tried to get a really quick and dirty degree. And so when I went in for communications, and my advisor at the time said, no, young lady, you're not getting an education degree because you've owned a salon for 20 years. And I think you're okay at communicating. So she said, pick something different, pick something that challenges you. And she said, is there any class that you're doing that's interesting? And I was, at the time I was taking a class from Dr. Dave Carnos, and it was a death, dying, and medical ethics class. And I said, well, that's interesting. It was every hot topic on death, assisted euthanasia, abortion, death penalty, all that. And I said, that's interesting. And she said, okay, let's create a degree around that. And so I ended up sort of just creating some internships, things like that. And so one of the internships that I did was a internship with the coroner's office in Billings, Montana, Yellowstone County. And what I did was a couple of days a week, I would just shadow mostly the deputy coroner. And so he would take me into every situation and, every angle. And I would see things from the cases to autopsies to, following cases around. I can't seem to shut this stupid thing off. And so I would follow him around. He would do the death notifications. Oh, my goodness. Sorry about that.
No, no worries.
Back on.
Well, that's the smart world we're living in. Believe me.
Yeah, it sort of beats me. So what I did was I traveled around with this deputy coroner and just sort of figured out the world. And I thought maybe what I would do is run for coroner. And then I thought, well, if I run for coroner, I don't really know anything about the human body. So I went to school and did my, I thought, well, I need to know how the body, what happens at death and, what happens when we decompose and all of that. So I thought, well, I'll get another degree in forensic anthropology because, that's sort of what I'm looking at. So I did the undergrad degree. And then my master's degree I did on basically decomp. I was looking at decomp in Montana, because at the time they had, the body farms, Dr. Bass and down in Tennessee, they had that body farm. And so a lot of the human decomposition, like sort of what we were used to or postmortem interval, updates, things like that were done for like humid areas. And so what we were seeing in our area was a lot of like mummification, but we were in a fairly semi-arid area. And so I thought, well, our decomp looks different than their decomp. So let me do some research on that. And so my master's degree sort of focused on more of, sort of what happens in a semi-arid area. And so I looked at decomp, but I also looked at forensic entomology. So half of my study was kind of in sort of collecting entomology and sort of studying, how good the postmortem interval estimates were using forensic entomology. And so it was sort of half and half. And then I went on to get my PhD in the cultural realm, which I will pause now because I feel like I'm just blah, blah, blah.
Well, so you were studying a lot in basically, that's you and your husband right there. You were studying a lot in basically bugs and bones is what you were doing.
Yep.
Because forensic entomology is the study of bugs in death, right? Or something.
Right.
Yeah. So interesting. And then from there, man, this is kind of an interesting. So you really never even thought about this when you were growing up. This was just kind of you actually had a high school, or you had a college counselor that actually was doing their job, and they actually were seeing some things in you, and they thought, no, you need to do this. And obviously they knew what they were doing because they put you in the right path.
I was always a very weird kid, no doubt about that. I mean, I like to look at dead things. And I actually, in like sixth grade biology, I think, in one of I think my science teacher's class, you would write your own obituary, which is interesting. But I wanted extra credit. So I went to the funeral home and asked for a tour. And, so this weird kid started early. So, Can you imagine if we went to the same high school together? We'd probably end up in the principal's office, honestly. Totally. Or in counseling. Yeah, right. For sure. Absolutely. So, right. So you do this, you go on there, you go on to get your PhD. And how long, just for the person that's watching this, if they were like, hey, this is fascinating. There's not really an age limit. I mean, obviously you were able to do this at any age. And so matter of fact, I had talked to her just briefly. Amanda, throw that picture of me standing there next to that really old guy that I showed. Yeah, there you go. That's Dr. Clyde Snow. And if you were to Google the most well-known, notorious anthropologist, I mean, he's on that list. And Clyde Snow was he's a really interesting guy. I was very blessed to get to know him, and I didn't tell you that full story about how I kind of, I met him and I knew he was a big deal. And when he would be in the medical examiner's office on occasion, he'd be in there and he'd be looking at these bodies, and he was allowed to smoke in there. He was the only one that I know of that was allowed to smoke in that office. And he smoked. He was 80 something years old. There was a body I remember specifically. It was just kind of a carcass, really. And there was like these big beetles, and you called them, what were they again? A dermestid.
Yeah. They're all over the place in this room, and he's just like, it's nothing. But the cool thing about Dr. Snow is that another forensic anthropologist that was kind of like his understudy that was kind of learning from him, she goes, hey, if there's anything that me or Dr. Snow can do. I said, well, there is something that you can do. I had been turned down for a school in New York City at the ME's office. And I said, you can have Dr. Snow call Dr. Hirsch, the medical examiner in New York City, and find out why Jason White is not in his class up there in New York City. And 2 days later, I found out I was accepted. So I was like, I'll never forget it. And I know he had something to do with it. So pretty cool. So you basically do, you're doing all this, you get your PhD. What is your PhD in?
Well, so my PhD is in death notification interactions. So it was interesting because I work a lot with, police officers and medical legal death investigators, people like that. And I go to a lot of coroner conferences. And so I've always said to them, what can I help you with as sort of a forensic anthropologist? What can I help you with? And, they've said, well, Lily, we obviously need help with the bones, and trying to figure out human, non-human, is it a bone or not, those things. But they said, the other thing that you could help us with is the emotional part, or, sort of the cultural part of, sort of, death investigations and that. And so it just, I thought about some of the, sort of following, the deputy coroner around. And I thought, oh yeah, because I could see times where they were having tough times and just wouldn't ask anybody or, it just sort of, they went on to the next day. And I had a particularly, sad one day that I was shadowing this, deputy coroner, and he gave a notification, and I was there and watched, and the people were accepting it, and he did really good, and it was just hard, like all of them are, and so we walked out, and he'd been doing it, I think at that time for like 27 or so years. We walked out and he said, I effed that one up. And I said, oh, no, you didn't. You did fine. And he said, no, I did. I really did. I blew it. And I said, well, I didn't see anything and I didn't sense anything. And I was trying to tell him that. And it was perception. And I learned a lot from that point, that he felt like he did, so that was his perception, and that was the feeling that stuck with him. And it also made me think that, gosh, if he felt like that, then how did the family really feel? I mean, was I not seeing what I was seeing, or, so it was perceptions. And so I went back to that day a lot, and I thought about it. And so even though I was studying the physical and the biological part of decomp and bodies and measuring skulls and, and helping people with that, I still, in my mind, it was still, I still need to do something about helping with this really, really hard part of the job, and that's what did it.
That's what's kind of extraordinary about you, is because, and I'm really thrilled that I called you and I messaged you, because you are, you have multiple roles. I mean, not only are you an instructor, that some of the classes that she actually teaches, believe it or not, it's pretty amazing. I mean, she teaches class on, basic human osteology, which is the study of the bone, but she also does clandestine burials, which is shallow graves, which is exciting. And then when I saw on there that she does the death notification interactions, and I actually do that when I'm speaking about death investigation as well. And you just a bunch of different things, recovery of scattered and buried human remains, etc. There's just a laundry list of different things. If you wanted to see the different classes that she actually is involved in, you could go to TriTech Training Forensics, but just type in her name, Dr. Teresa Lily White, and you'll see the different classes that she actually is involved in. And not only that, but Amanda, throw up her book. This is a book that just recently came out, and you guys just did this project, and this is a textbook, really. I mean, it's big deal. Tell us a little bit about what this is all about.
Well, let's see, I have it behind me. I'll grab it.
Yeah.
So it's, my husband Stocky, that just gave his, proof of life, appearance. He helped out on that. He did the third one as the archaeologist and helping to preserve the remains. But so the first two parts, it's basically a field guide on how to identify, recover, and preserve human skeletal remains. And so the first part of this book is all of the bones, of the body, and we do the adult bones, and then we do the comparison between, sort of that growth between infant to adult. And then the last part of the bone is sort of human, non-human, because I get those calls a lot, and they'll send me a text message and they'll say, Lily, human or non-human? And I'll very quickly look at it and say, non-human, you can, toss it, or, if it's an area where it was poaching or something, then you're going to have to contact somebody else. But so the second part of this book is actually how to do a recovery and of both skeletal remains and buried human remains. And it sort of was just our dreamed up by me and another forensic anthropologist, Dr. Hillary Parsons. And so we've taught some classes together and just have had a really good working relationship for, 10, 15 years. I don't exactly remember how many, but we do a lot of classes together. And at one point we had somebody from the CRC Press, Mark, say to us, hey, you want to write a book? And we're like, well, I don't know what book. And then we're like, yes, we do know what book. It would be a field guide that was directed to like detectives, medical, legal, death investigators. And so we wanted something that was sort of picture heavy and, like not very many words. So it's like you can flip through there and actually, do these recoveries with this field guide. So that's what we did. And so we're really excited about it. We took all the pictures for it, and we're really proud of it. So
as you should be. That's a big deal. And it's exciting to have something like that. Now, mind you, to the listeners that are out there that are police officers throughout this country, that doesn't give you, just because you get this book, call the anthropologist. They need to be there when you're doing these, when you're excavating these individuals. And the beautiful part, and I don't know, I'm pretty sure you're probably the same way as it is here in Oklahoma, but that's great. They'll let you get gloves on, and they'll let you put on a bodysuit. They'll let you help.
Absolutely.
They will help you. They teach you, and it's fun. And it's fun for people like me. And you know the type. There's some that no way.
Right.
But no, this is interesting stuff. Thank you, Kimber. And I appreciate you being a fan of me, and I appreciate all the people that are in here that are fans of the show, because I really need you to show up. That's great. So that's good. So you do all this other things. You talked a little bit about, all right, so you finally get your degree. Then now were you already working for the Emmys office as a investigator at this point, or did you just focus on your college and then you got
Yeah, mostly just the college, and and it was kind of interesting because I did the master's and I did this sort of the undergrad, and so it was sort of a truncated undergrad because I had already had the graduate degree from or I already had the undergrad degree from another Montana college. And so I had to go a shorter amount of time, like 40 credits to get the undergrad degree. And so then I, sort of pretty quickly did my master's. And then while I was at it, I thought, well, I'll just finish up with, the PhD. I mean, you're already in it. Your head's already in it. You're already in so much.
You're already in so much debt. What's another?
Yeah. Why not? And we both did it at the same time. We actually graduated at the same time. So we were, it's like we were living in a little apartment. We started in a studio and then went to a little bit bigger apartment in Missoula, Montana. We went to University of Montana, go Grizz. And so we did, that shtick for as long as it took us to graduate. But it was really interesting because when I was doing the, physical anthropology, and I wanted to move to the cultural. And we talked about cultural anthropology a little bit before we started this. And it was kind of funny because what happens is there's an anthropology degree. And so what happens is with an anthropology degree, there are 4 things underneath the anthropology degree that you can, work in or study in. And so one is archaeology. The other one is linguistics. Then there's physical anthropology or biological anthropology. And then there's archaeology. And so you kind of just figure out underneath that umbrella of anthropology, what you want to study. So there's a lot of, different specialties that you can get into. So I was in the forensic anthropology lane, and I, went to, different professors and people at the University of Montana. And I said, so I want to go in the cultural realm. And they're like, nah. I said, oh, but I really want to go in the cultural realm. And they're like, well, you're a forensic anthropologist, you'd, stay in your lane. And I was like, I know, but, I don't want to stay in my lane. And, it was kind of interesting because I made a slight segue before I went to the death notification lane. I initially thought that one of the things that I was also interested in was equivocal death. And so I was,
which means what? What does that mean to the viewer?
Oh, well, so it's death that you can't really determine with, so is it accident? Is it suicide? But I was looking at sort of like autoerotic death. Oh. And
yet another bizarre area, Lily.
Yeah. So I did basically researched it for I don't know how many months and sort of did a 40-page lit review on it so a couple of my one professor in particular said, yeah, I like the idea, but I don't think you're going to get past the institutional review board. I don't think there's going to be any way that they're going to let you observe autoerotic asphyxia. So I'm like,
well, I mean, I'm sure you probably watched a video or two of it actually happen where somebody died. I mean, yes. And it's not a pleasant video to watch either.
No, it's not.
And that's happened because people have videotaped themselves while they're doing their thing and they slip and that's all she wrote, man. But it's not fun to watch.
Have you ever gone to a talk by Dr. Emma Lou?
No, but it sounds
Oh.
like something I'd be interested in for sure.
Yeah. She retired from, I believe, Miami-Dade. And so she's done, quite a few presentations on that. And so I've ended up giving, like American Academy of Forensic Sciences, we did a panel on it where I presented, sort of my research with the lit review. And then I did it with a pathologist and a forensic psychologist and a crime scene investigator. And we did a panel together and sort of just talked about it. But basically, they said, Lily, I don't think you're going to get that done. I mean, present it, at a science conference, but yeah.
Let me ask you a stupid question that I really don't know the answer to.
Okay.
Do females ever do anything along those lines, or is that?
Yep.
Okay.
It's both.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
And it's interesting because, the thing that interests me was that, a lot of times, and before people really understood what was happening, they were listing a lot of these deaths as suicide when they weren't. It was an accidental death, and it was sexual asphyxia for autoerotic, stimulation that went wrong. And so it was quite a fight to be able to, change a lot of people's death certificate to be able to say, listen, it was an accidental death and we don't want, suicide written on their death certificate. So it was more of that. And I actually have went on several that I thought, and at the time, the coroner ruled it a suicide, and I thought, I didn't agree. I saw all the signs of autoerotic and mirror and the different things around, but I kind of wanted to change people's thoughts and ideas of, what we do.
I got to tell you a crazy story that just popped into my head. And
Sure.
So I somebody that I know, their son had tragically been found in Europe, like in Holland, I think. I can't remember that. It might have been wherever Amsterdam is. I think it was in Holland. And they wanted me to go look at the body. They had the body shipped over here to Tulsa, and they wanted me to take a look. And so I went over there. I met him at the funeral home, and I'm standing there. And it was kind of cool because the casket was like, it almost looked like a vampire could be in it. They was like a wooden box shaped like what Dracula would crawl out of. You know what I mean?
Right.
real cheap. And so I'm looking at this thing, and I'm looking at this guy, and he had the neck wounds and all this, that, and the other. And I'm just kind of looking at this. And then the funeral guy, and I don't know what his role was, but he's kind of like a funeral director or whatever. And he goes, yeah. And this is the family's there too while this is happening. And he goes, yeah, it looks like autoerotic asphyxia to me. And I'm sitting there I'm looking at this guy like, whoa, that's that. Wow. He just laid it out there. Well, it turned out honestly, because I'm sitting there going, how in the heck does he know this? And so, it turned out that's what it was. I didn't, the authorities from back there in where Amsterdam was, they actually, do their investigation. They actually ruled that that's exactly what it was. But I was like, how the heck does this guy know that? But all right.
Right.
Crazy.
Right, yeah. A lot of them are, sort of, but you need to know something about them. So a lot of people, there's certain indications that they do this a lot, and so sometimes, you would have something like if there's a rope hanging from the ceiling, you would see somewhere where they do it a lot, and so there's, just some different indications that help people realize that, okay, this was done for these purposes, and the no judgment zone. It's like, okay, but there's such a stigma with anything like that it was like, suicide, because depending on the death investigator or coroner or whatever, it's like, well, that's kinky. And so they, and so it was like they were sort of introducing their own biases into, sort of determining the manner of death. And because they, they thought it was kinky or whatever. And it's like, gosh, I mean.
Yeah. And a lot of times people get cut down by the time we get there anyway on those kind of deals.
Right.
So I'm sure that they may try to, who knows what goes on to that scene before we get there.
Right.
Interesting stuff. So from there, you end up doing this, and you finally get a job as a. So you focused on school. You get through school. You get through all of that. Then where do you end up working? Do you work straight for the ME's office, or do you have a medical examiner or coroner system, or both?
We have a coroner system, and so we have two. We have our main medical examiner's office is in Missoula, which is about an hour and a half north of here where I live, and then we have another one in Billings, which is about 7 hours away. So pretty far apart in a really large state. So mostly it's the coroner system. And so basically what we did is we started our business in 2013. So we started that when I was finished with, or sort of doing the master's degree, and sort of started helping and working with people and looking at cases at that time. And so then basically I knew that I wanted to teach sort of these short courses or whatever. So I just have been doing that. So I teach those for TriTech and for our own business. So I do some short courses for Bone and Stone as well. And then I also do deployments. So I work for DMORT Region 8. So I get deployed with them when they need it. And I also do some deployments for Kenyan International Emergency Services. So I just returned, a couple weeks ago, I guess, I was deployed for the UPS crash.
Oh, and wow. So, okay.
Yeah. And have also deployed with them for a lot of COVID, couple different times with COVID. Initially, first with them for COVID when it was first happening in New York. And I think at the time there were 4,000 deaths. And so I did that, and then deployed another time for DMORT, which is, there was the COVID for New York. And also deployed for DMORT down to Albuquerque, New Mexico. And we did more COVID at that time. That was a couple years later, but they had some cases that they hadn't settled yet. So we helped them sort of find loved ones and, do these sort of notifications and things like that. So I'm basically on call whenever they need me. This last one for UPS, they called, and I think in 2 hours I was at the airport. So it's really fast. You have a ready bag and you just go and
it was a crazy accident. I mean, it's just a crazy situation. Tell everybody what DMORT is, what it stands for. I know there's a mother load of different roles that you can do it with them. So, and she kind of touched upon it. You go to big disasters. 9/11 would be something that if you were doing that at that time, you would have for sure been going to the Pentagon or the World Trade Center deal, et cetera. Yeah. But so what is DMORT, and how does one get on it?
So DMORT is basically, I'm not sure what I'm forgetting right now what it stands for, but it's basically Disaster Mortuary Services. And so, we're there's quite a few of us that we help with ID. So there's a lot of forensic anthropologists, there's medical examiners, medical legal death investigators, odontologists, funeral directors. So there's that group of us that, depending on what the disaster is or what they need, they'll say, okay, we need, from this region, we need, 2 anthros or whatever. And so for them, I'm actually listed as a medical investigator because I've had training in death investigations and also sort of bloodstain pattern and, a lot of the things that are, death investigator types. So I'm a medical investigator for them, but I also do sort of the, victim services and the family assistance and same thing with Kenyan International. So pretty much I can wear whatever hat when I go on a disaster. So they like having the ability to have someone that can, jump into a couple different roles. So I do that with them and very satisfying work. And so.
It's interesting because I I've known a few people that are a part of that, but not very many. And I know that there's people all over the place. I guess that they just don't have any homicide guys. I mean, I don't know what we would do. Maybe victim services or something, but I don't know. Do you know of any homicide people? I mean, I don't know how long you've been on, but.
Well, it's funny because I know that my team, I approached them in like 2013, and they said, do the FEMA classes and, fill all that out. And so then there was like a hiring freeze for like 7 years. But then in 2020, basically, interestingly, I think shortly before COVID, they said, okay, we're going to start hiring people again. So right away, my two folks got in touch with me and said, hey, Lily, we want you on, and you're going to get called more often if we put you down as a medical investigator than with a forensic anthropologist. They said, unfortunately, people tend to think that the forensic anthropologists go only for like the bones, but we go for decomp and we're able to help take DNA samples, and so there's a lot of different other things like we teach people sort of the difference between human tissue and non-human tissue, or like osseous versus non-osseous tissue, or we can look at human versus non-human remains and be able to differentiate between the two, which is another couple of the different classes that I teach. Is a lot of death investigators or scene investigators say, these bones are so close, and, they'll send me a picture and they'll say, I think this is a human femur. And it's like, it's close, but it is not, so we help with that too. So if you've got a big, a flood or a airline crash or whatever it happens to be, an avalanche or whatever, we can help with, differentiating or telling the difference between these different bones pretty easily. And then also how to recover them and document them properly and, photograph and all that, which one of my kind of the part that I like to push a lot with scene investigators is that before they were sort of understanding that the documentation is really important, the same way that you document your evidence on a scene, your skeletal remains are evidence as well. So I can't tell you how many investigators or coroners or whatever would bring in bones into the office, and it'd be like, what are you doing? You don't take evidence away from a scene and bring it into the office. So it's like, no. So they're getting really good about it, or they're actually asking, to have a class and be able to say, how do we do this, or, help us understand how this works.
Danny Couples, it's in here. He's watching. He worked as an investigator down in Tennessee, and we I don't know when you were in New York or not, if you had an opportunity to visit the forensic laboratory there next to the medical examiner's office. Did you get a chance?
Yeah.
I think it's the world's largest, if I'm not mistaken. And both he and I trained there, 3 different times to do bloodstain analysis. And one time, but you'll love this, because in advanced medical legal death investigations, they had a station. I remember, because they had a whole freaking floor full of anthropologists probably there, but they'd stick like tables, and they'd have like a pile of bones, and then you had to sift through there and pick out which ones are the human and which one are animal. And then the next station would be basically dismemberments. And you'd have to say, okay, I think this was a chopping, like an axe. And these are these are real people, ladies and gentlemen. These are probably mafia hits, to tell you the truth. And which ones were chainsaws, and go through. It was so awesome to be able to do that. And of course, we're not experts at it when you're done, but it just gives you an idea as to what you're looking at. It kind of gives you an introduction to it. And it's a fabulous place, isn't it? It's an incredible place. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting because during our deployment for COVID, for that initial one that was April, and like I said, there were only, 4,000 deaths at the time. And, you know, they told us before we went, they said, you know, New York shut down. And I used to go to New York a couple times a year, and I'm like, right, that's no way. And sure enough, when I showed up, I just couldn't believe it. I mean, it was shut down tight. And the only people that would be on the streets were people in scrubs or whatever. But so you know, basically where they did the temporary morgue was close to the medical examiner's office. So it was down there on like from 23rd to like
26th and 1st. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was just sort of out, and it took up several blocks. And then when that got filled up, then we went out to Brooklyn and, you know, sort of, you know, took the bodies out there, or we would be midnight. I was at the midnight crew, or from 7 at night until 7 in the morning. And, you know, we were running the whole time to the different boroughs and picking up.
I can't imagine. I can't imagine. I mean, did you get COVID?
I think I still have brain fog, and it's going to be my excuse forever now. But I didn't ever get symptoms. I didn't, you know, have any of that stuff. But I got a lot of, you know, that kind of. But I didn't ever get sick. And you know, we were pretty careful, but you can only be so careful. You know, we would suit up and. It was interesting because none of us knew what we were going into, you know, so it was like, oh my God, you know, we're all looking at each other like, oh, we're crazy. And I had everybody worried sick here at home, and, you know, and they were like, you have no idea what's going on. And of course we couldn't tell anybody because they were like, keep your mouth shut. Don't, you know, no pictures, don't say anything, you know? And so it was just really, really quiet and tight. And so our nights were, you know, we had a van, and then we had a pickup van. And so they were just shooting us addresses, and we were going. And so it got a little bit spooky. It was spooky the whole time, really. But when we were going back to places several times, we're like, weren't we just here? And, you know, maybe it was the apartment down the hall, and, you know, we're looking at each other like, huh. And what would happen was our different Kenyan team members, Kenyan International Emergency Services, our team members would go with like 3 to 5 National Guard folks. And so we would just go to these locations and then just remove bodies all through the night. And you know, we just, you know, we did it quietly. And for the most part, you know, a lot of it, families were there, and they were confused, and they're like, what is happening? You know, and we didn't know what was happening. And so here we come in, we pull up and we put our Tyveks on, and, you know, we come inside, and here's, you know, 4 people with their Tyveks on, and we've got masks and full suits. And then we would go outside and we'd take off our Tyveks and, you know, use our sanitizer and stuff. And people started watching this happening because we were the only people on the streets. We were, you know, I mean, the streets were so quiet that it was these vans and these rental vans driving around picking up bodies. It was apocalyptic. And so people were looking down. And so when the kids would disrobe off of their Tyvek suits, they had military scrubs on. So I remember a lot of people that you could hear kind of that would follow us outside, or, you know, they would find out what the heck we were doing with these bodies. And then they would be like, it's the military. And, you know, they were petrified because they thought it was some sort of, you know, weird, bizarro thing that our government was, you know, doing, you know, against people. And so, but it was amazing, and it was an amazing time, and it was a heartbreaking time, and such good people. You know, some of those military kids were just kids, you know, and I would ask, you know, each night I would get, like I said, a shift, and I would get a group, you know, 3 or 4, and I would say, who here has done this kind of work? And, you know, none. And I'd say, well, who has been around a dead body? and like one of the kids would be like, well, I went to my aunt's funeral. I'm like, well, this is going to be a little different.
Yeah. Talk about a crash course and it's, I mean, you're not designed to see that kind of death. You're just not that kind. And I have no doubt that still is memorable to you to another level. Let me ask you, I'm just curious because I didn't even know we were going to get into the COVID end of it. This is fascinating me to an extent. Now, I know somebody, her name's Dreama. I'm going to give her a shout out. She lives out on the reservation in the Navajo reservation in western New Mexico. So out there, kind of Navajo, Hopi area. And just to give the viewers an idea what reservation she lives on, it's like where Walter White was making meth and Breaking Bad. That's where she lives. She lives on that reservation, really close to where that was. Now, her family got decimated by COVID, and I could see why in a place like New York, when you have a very dense population, it's all over the place. But why was it that the reservation got decimated with it? We're talking out there in the middle of nowhere in Arizona and New Mexico, and it seemed like they really got hit hard. And if you were working a little bit, at least in the Albuquerque area, what was it about that specific area? Was it just because I don't know. What was it about that?
Well, I think a lot of times when there's a lot of families that live together, where there's multiple generations that are living together, that you just can't get away from it. So like I mentioned with some of our in New York or whatever, we were going back, like one of the families, the dad had died in the hospital a couple days before, and then we went back and the mom and the daughter were dead at home, and so it was a lot of sort of within the family. Like we were coming back to either a close, in the same building or even in the same house that died. And I think it's just that close. It was so powerful, and it just, people caught it, and there was so little you could do. And then a lot of times too, it was a matter of sort of getting in your chest and that pneumonia part that you just couldn't get rid of. And so if you had those issues to begin with, then it was particularly bad. And so I think that could have been one of the reasons was, a lot of families living together and just, giving it to each other and catching it. And then I'm sure that the resources, the health providers probably weren't, it's in the middle of nowhere. They probably aren't just running up to the clinic. They're out there where they're not getting treated. Yeah. Or you had the, vaccine hesitancy. So it was like, right. Okay, guys, and so, and the hard part about that was, and the frustrating part about that was I was seeing all of this at the very beginning. And, we were all like, just like, and I came back to Montana, 6 weeks later or whatever. And, I went to sort of like some weird, like I said, apocalyptic kind of stuff. I mean, when we would drop the bodies off, you opened up this door and they were just, there were, I can't imagine. And I came back here and, not to mention that, where my mind goes, not to mention how many of those were there might've been some murders sprinkled in there too. Yeah. And, that was that was a challenging part, is that the medical examiner, we were just in that, here's the body, here's the next body. And they're like, wait, that one needs an autopsy. So, it was, and the medical examiners were just hammered, just hammered with stuff. And so, it was truly challenging, but I come back to Montana in May, and everybody's partying and they're close talking and they're 8 of them were having dinner together. And I'm like, and I was like, sky is falling. And they're like, oh, Lily,
Yeah.
they're like,
Hey, Oklahoma was the same as that. Let me tell you, when we were working from home, and when we went out to the streets on a homicide, it was nuts. Anyway, murders like we've never seen before in this city, and it's like, are you guys nuts? Why aren't you staying inside of your house? But and everybody we were dealing with, they weren't wearing any masks. As a matter of fact, we would have interviews with people, and we started trying to wear masks. But to tell you the truth, I have to read people's faces. It was incredibly difficult, and I don't think I ever got COVID, Lily. I think I was a super carrier, is what I think, because
Right.
But you know what? When you work in certain industries, we did lose one cop to it. But when you work in certain industries, I think we have like almost a natural immune system. We're around filth all the time and just all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. And I feel like that's a possibility. And, we had people that were instantly sick. And so it's like, oh, okay, they're out, and it's like, all right, who's next? And, they were isolating them we were trying to be isolated anyway. But it was a fascinating study, as an anthropologist. I'm like, what the hell, people, what do you, it's not a joke, but, and so it was also interesting because, we had a lot of coroners that didn't want to assign them as COVID, and it's like, and I had a real good friend that called me not long after I got back, and she said, I just had a friend pass away, and she described the basically that she died of COVID, and I said, well, it's probably COVID. She fell over dead in her kitchen or whatever it was, and I said she probably died of COVID. And she said, well, no, the coroner said it was heart attack or whatever. And I said, well, yeah, eventually, because everybody's heart stops. Everybody
has a heart attack eventually.
Yeah. And
interesting.
So I said, pneumonia with a heart attack. It's like, well, yeah. So boy, it was frustrating, really frustrating. So I see part of my job is to help inform, but a lot of times I just.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. This is interesting to me also is, well, first of all, Danny had mentioned this, and I'm glad he mentioned it, because what is your thoughts as a homicide detective? I run into this all the time, and I think it's just straight up ignorance, honestly. But what are your thoughts? It's like most of the people that I've worked with over the years, they think that cadaver dogs are witchcraft, and I think that they're legit. I mean, they've been around forever, decades, for a reason. Dogs can find a cartridge casing in a football field. There's no doubt in my mind that they have a use when it comes to cadaver dogs. So what are your thoughts on that? And I know that you're not a canine operator, but you deal with these types of tools periodically. Yeah. So what are your thoughts?
I actually, we had some from search and rescue when we were in like Livingston, Montana, which is where we first grew up. And what I find is it depends on the trainer, and it depends on how well they're trained. You'll have some that are just poor. It's not the dog, it's the poor trainer. It's like, Kudo, stop it. They're alerting. It's like, no, they're not. Yeah. So we saw, I don't know, some that were great, some that weren't, but we also had one, my husband did most of the search and rescue, and he had a real fascinating one because he wasn't totally sold on it either on cadaver dogs, because he had seen some hits and misses. But one of the times they took the cadaver dog, they had a guy it was called Yankee Jim Canyon, and it was a really sort of wicked area of the river that people, if they went floating in that area, they were probably going to get themselves in trouble, but they did anyway. And so this guy went under and didn't come back up. Well, so the search team was searching, way downriver, and, there's rapids and there's everything. And so they brought the cadaver dog into my husband's boat with him, and the cadaver dog was alerting right where he went in. And they're like, okay, well, that's where he went in, so that makes sense. He went in right there. Makes sense. And so then they were bringing different dogs, and so they're like, alert, alert. So they kept alerting on where he went in. And they're like, oh, this is strange. Okay, so not downstream. Well, as it turns out, he went down. This place was called Boxcar Canyon because trains used to go off there, and the actual train would fall into the water. So it was really, really, really deep down there. And so the kid actually went down and unfortunately drowned and was caught up down there. So he was actually just close to where he went in. So the dogs were right in that case. And so he's like, Stocky was like, okay, well, geez, prove me wrong, because he was there. And so since then, I've seen some other really good handlers. And I think that's part of it, is that sort of, the handler has to be really good and, working with the dog. And so the ones that I've seen recently, I think, do a much better job, and the training is really good, and just a lot better training, and they're just a lot better at it. So yeah, I'm good with it. I've seen a lot of good ones.
That makes great sense. I'm sure that there's some good stories, and there's others. Welcome. Yeah, somebody, a sun lover, says that their dog could find a beer can in the middle of a forest. Yeah, that's funny. So hey, up in Montana, you guys deal with a lot of indigenous population, and you watch Yellowstone, and
I have
so
never
forth.
seen it.
Are you kidding me?
I have not seen it, not one episode.
Well, I've never watched Tulsa King either. So, but I'm
yeah.
You're missing out. Yellowstone's pretty awesome, but
everybody tells me that.
It is. So with respect to, I'm sure that they uncover Indian remains from time to time. And what is that? What is the challenges that exist with that in your area? That's got to be something unique that you guys have to notify the tribes. Everything comes to a stop, that kind of a thing.
Yep. NAGPRA, Native American Graves Repatriation Act, is basically, if you come onto anything that you believe or you even think is, Native American remains, then it's hands off. You get in touch with the coroner, the burial board, and so, it's off limits. And we have a way too many missing and murdered Indigenous women, especially. But so people are looking all the time for these people. But it's such a vast, huge state where
I'm asking you a big question here, and I don't expect
Okay.
You don't have all the answers, but what is the reason for that? That's a huge. If you knew the answer to why, you'd probably win the Nobel Peace Prize. But I'm just curious, what is the deal with the large number? Because the FBI even has a special task force for this, for missing and murdered Indigenous women.
Yeah.
And what is the deal, and what's going on? I know that we have the problem down in Oklahoma, to not even probably close to Montana, Wyoming, maybe South Dakota. But what, if just kind of have an idea.
Some of my guesses are that, is there, first of all, maybe the people that do that think that they're a vulnerable population. Trafficking or whatever, or people aren't going to miss them, or some kind of crazy, crazy stupid idea like that. Or, maybe on those reservations or things like that people aren't going to come looking for them. They're not going to notice that they're missing, or a lot of times because of, that they're sovereign, a lot of times they won't have that involvement for the other police services. So, so maybe there's something about it that they think that they're going to get away with doing that. Because it's not going to involve different authorities, because of the sovereign nature of it, or, I just don't know. It's a really big question, and it's a really big question. What makes them be the victim? It would be really good to have somebody on that is missing someone. There's a gal, I think she did with her family, did a missing and murdered, or, they're still looking for one of the gals, but there's several that are missing around here that we wish we could find. But I do think some of it, I think even some of the folks from the reservation blame some of their tribal police, things like that, for not doing more, not involving more authorities or not doing it sooner, in those really, as those crucial 48 hours, if you're not involved early, then, you're so far behind the game that, who knows? And if it's trafficking, I mean, geez, and
it's a big question. It's a big question. Yeah. I know that there's a lot of variables, but
we're close to Canada. Not that that's a situation, but I don't know, but that's a great question. It's a great research question for anybody out there that's going to do some research. That would be a great thesis or a dissertation.
Yeah, I'm speaking at a drug abuse conference at the Indian Choctaw Nation, and they wanted me to touch upon that because of the grant. They want to be able to fund it. Would get me down there, but I was like, I'll touch upon it, but it's not something that And here where we're at in Oklahoma, we had a Supreme Court decision that basically the McGirt decision. So Oklahoma is a little bit unique. I know that you have tribes. You have tribes in Montana. There's no doubt about it, and we do too here. But it's a little bit different where we're all cross deputized with the FBI, U.S. Marshals, the tribes, and we work these cases. So I mean, if somebody comes up missing, we're generally the ones working them. But anyway, interesting. So I want to touch upon this before we get done here today, and a couple, maybe a case or two that you could share that was just kind of a career case for you, maybe of something really interesting as far as a dig or something that you've come across. I know there's probably a lot to choose from, but something that really stands out to you. A case that you were involved in. Yeah,
it's kind of interesting. It's not a forensic case, but
let me ask you this real quick. I'm going to stop you.
Sure.
What is it what is the extra part? What makes you forensic? What is forensic, just for the listener here, what is a forensic anthropologist compared to a regular anthropologist? What does really the term forensic mean to the world?
Well, we apply sort of bioanthropological principles to forensic investigations. So basically, we use our principles and our methods to help aid forensic investigations. So we help law enforcement, and so we basically use our methods to help them sort of identify remains or sort of figure out basically who these people are or who they belong to. So we sort of, the forensic part is that it has to do with law enforcement. So if there's a case, then we help, we write a report. A lot of times when we analyze the skeletal remains, we'll look for trauma, we'll look for pathology, and if you haven't identified those remains, then a lot of times we look for idiosyncratic things on the skeletons. So if we know that maybe, Mary Smith is missing, and so we say, well, antemortem, like what happened bioanthropologically in Mary's life that we would recognize. So did she break an arm? Did she, are we going to be able to see something on her skeleton where we can say, if Mary broke, her right arm and she broke it here, and here's the antemortem x-rays. And so we see the same thing. So that's a lot where we help, or we can help if we see, sharp or blunt force trauma, things like that. We help the investigator get to that cause of death. We don't determine it. That's not our jam, but our jam is basically to help you get those questions answered. So,
and also you can tell a lot from like a skull. Yep. And age from the fissures and stuff like that, right? Within range, right? Yeah,
we do a basically what we refer to as sort of a biological profile. So we look at sort of age estimations. We look at some stature. We look at osteological sex. We look at sort of population affinity, which, used to be sort of the race card sort of thing, but, it has more to do with biocultural patterns and, sort of idiosyncratic nature of the individual skeletons themselves. So those are the things that we help with. We sort of narrow down who these skeletal remains belong to, and sort of help them. Is it osteologically, sex, is it closer to male or is it closer to female? And so we use the pelvis is the first thing that we use, and obviously they're a little bit different due to birth, and then the next thing that we use is the skull. And so there's different traits that we use, that we look at, and then we do like sort of ordinal scores on these to say, this has features that are, more male. This one is more female. It's really difficult. So when we teach that in classes or workshops or these hands-on classes that I teach, I like to show them the skulls, and, the pelvis of them. And I want to say that I can see the difference. Can you see the difference? So it's really, really hard. And we want people to, understand that it's like, these are things that we look at a lot. We go through hundreds or thousands of remains to be able to say, those are small mastoid processes, overall compared to those large mastoid processes, so it's not something that you can actually teach very quickly, but it's something that we do teach to our classes to let them see that, okay, we understand that. And so when we're helping you out in the field, that's how we narrow it down a little bit quicker. Than actually taking the DNA, sending that off, or doing carbon-14 dating. Yeah. So instead of doing those things, we can narrow it down pretty quickly.
Well, I can tell you from my own experience that they do a lot, and their work is painstaking. I mean, even to the point where, I hate to mention this, but I mean, our anthropologist, I mean, she had somebody in a crock pot for like years, man. Because you guys are trying. I know that sounds horrible, but I'm telling you. I would ask her, I'm like, oh my gosh, how long is she going to be in this thing? Because she's trying to remove the tissue from the bone. Right. And it took forever. And there was like red stuff growing. And I'm like, what is that? She's like, I don't know. But I'm like, yeah. And it's not, and it doesn't smell pleasant either. No, it was horrible. No. But
and my husband, Stocky's really funny because, I drag stuff home all the time. And so he'll say, where's that going? I'm like, oh, it's gonna go in a box as soon as I macerate it, and so we have 2 crock pots here at home. And he's like, you keep your crock pot out in the garage.
Never go to your house on a yard sale. That's for sure.
No.
Yeah. So what's your career case? Do you have like a career case of something that was just really fascinating? Or I have 2 questions. That's one. Yeah. And then the other one I want to segue to in a minute. And then we're getting close to being done. I don't want to keep it too long. But has the skeleton changed from, the earliest times to today? I mean, I'm talking caveman times, or early times. Has it evolved into different things? I'm sure they're taller. I don't know. What's the difference?
Yeah, it's like, it's not a whole, it's not huge. We see some different things like, the coccyx bone on, the humans, we don't need a tail anymore. So, you sort of see them getting smaller or whatever, but there's not a lot of things that are, evolution happens very slowly. So there's not a lot that we see quickly. What I do see is bigger feet on, probably in the last, I don't know how many years, like the kids when I was growing up in school had, maybe the girls had a size 6 to a 7 foot and the boys had maybe a 9. These kids are all like 13s or you know, and the girls have bigger feet, and the boys have, huge feet. And so that's an interesting thing, and would be worth, more research. But overall, it's very, very similar to what it's been like.
All right.
Yeah.
So, all right. So what's a career case for you?
Well,
anything really bizarre, crazy?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, for some people, it's not a forensic case, but Stocky, my husband, we mentioned in the beginning, full circle, he's an archaeologist. And so his work was on the Clovis culture. And it was the only burial in Montana that had Clovis remains. So it had the remains of a child buried there. So it was mostly skull and a few postcranial bones. And so I was one of, if not the last anthropologist that actually was able to do analysis. We haven't actually published the paper yet or the book because we're both busy doing our other jobs and writing and doing all that other stuff. But we were the last ones, and we were luckily able to go to it wasn't a repatriation because the tribes and the family got together and they willingly, or did it together, just reburied this child. It was actually two different sets, but they actually got together and had a reburial ceremony for this. And so it was really very exciting, sort of to have the tribes, blessing and be able to work collaboratively with them to, be able to say, well, are we able to do this? And so we took measurements and measured weight and size and things like that before the reburial of these child's remains. So that to me is my, sort of part of my heart, and just felt good. And so those were about 12,000, 13,000 year old skeletal remains. So,
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah. So
Epic.
that was pretty amazing. Not many people get to do that. So that is always on the top of my list as my big one. And, and I've helped with a lot of forensic cases and things like that. But I just mostly, help them. A lot of times, like I say, it helped them with, is this a, human? It's like, nope.
Yeah.
So,
well, I kind of, when I think of a Montana, I also think that you've probably on occasion, you guys get somebody that's been buried up there in the glacier or something like that, where, Mount Everest, I mean, they've got people that died up on that, they can't get them down. I mean, so you got hikers that are literally going by human beings that are dead and they've been there for 25, 30 years exposed.
Yep.
It's unbelievable, and I'm sure that on occasion in Montana, you run across that every now and then. Do they look, if you have, I mean, I would think that they'd look pretty preserved, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's, like I say that, almost 13,000 year old skull was, maybe thin a little bit of where, taphonomically it was worn a little bit, but it's still, morphometrically was still, it's still the same shape. You could see all the features on it. So, that's 13,000 years ago. And I've done some exhumations that the people have been buried, 19, 20 years. And one in particular still had like pink flesh. So it's, you're never sure what you're going to encounter. And I do help people.
We're talking like a shallow grave. We're not talking like it
was about 6 feet deep, and
really?
it was almost 20 years, and there was still flesh on the skull. So
wow, I mean, but they weren't embalmed. They weren't like an embalmed burial, right?
Well, they were. Yeah, he was embalmed. So
okay.
So that was embalmed one, and so. Wow. So it's just, you just never know what you're going to get. And I do help a lot of, because I teach my classes in different states. I do get a lot of other, coroners and investigators that, that I help with, in Florida or Alabama or Idaho, Washington, California. So there's a lot of different places, but we see a lot of the same things. So we're able to help wherever we can.
Let's mention your website again for the viewers in the event that they need to utilize your services. And it was, what's the name of it? I know you're part of that trad forensics, right? But what's the other one?
Bone and Stone Anthropsciences.com.
Okay, so you can check out her website. I checked it out. There's a lot of cool stuff on there. Your book, go to Amazon. It's available if that's the field that you're in, and you're looking to. If you're what's a really good school for forensic anthropology? If somebody really they're looking to research, where do I go to school for? I know they're all over probably, but I mean, I say they're all over. I don't know how rare that is.
Yeah, it just depends on sort of what you want to get into. There's with forensic anthropology or anthropology cultural or archaeology. The people that taught me sort of in the beginning, the forensic anthropology part, one is retired and one I think is now down in Texas. Ashley Cowan is down in Texas, and I'm not sure who's still at the University of Montana. I think there's one that she does a lot of really good stuff on DNA. They've opened up a new sort of DNA, which is so useful now. That's Dr. Meredith Snow. She's at the University of Montana. And I know some good folks that are getting their masters and their PhDs there. There's a lot of different schools. So you just have to investigate what angle you want to get into and see what school sort of specializes in that particular one. So,
all right. Well, I appreciate it, Lily. We could sit here and talk for hours, and there's just no way that we could scratch the surface of what she could talk about. I want to thank everybody that's been here tonight. JP, thank you. I think it was informative as well. Carrie, thank you for your comments. Barbara, and just everybody that's hung in there. Shelley, I appreciate the good comments. Tell your friends. What a fun! Doesn't this go by quick? It just goes by so fast, and such a. I hope you had a good time. I'm going to consider you a friend from here on. And if I have it, I know it's great. You can never have enough friends in this world, especially in the forensic community. And
weirdos. We are weird.
I know.
Weird friends.
I know. And believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, I'd asked her husband. Her husband's an archaeologist, a forensic archaeologist. I was like, well, then I need to have you on. And so he'll probably be on down the line. And how cool would that be to have them both having an episode? You can catch this on Spotify, Apple, all of those streaming deals. I would prefer you went to my Detective Jason White YouTube page. So if you're listening to me on Rumble or anywhere, remember, like and subscribe. It takes you less than 30 seconds to subscribe to my page. I appreciate it when you do. Don't worry, I'm not running to the bank with loads of money. You're not making me rich. But what it does is it helps with the algorithm, people. And what that means is that it helps me get viewed more. It helps me get bigger guests. And plus people want to come on here and they want to have a lot of people watching this. That's what it's about. So I appreciate everybody. We're going to have an episode next week. I don't know who it's going to be just yet, but we are going to have one. And then we're going to take a Christmas break is what we're going to do, and the Christmas New Year break. So, ladies and gentlemen, thanks a lot. Lily, episode number 77. You did not disappoint. I'm honored to know you. Oh, it's really an honor. It's an honor for everybody to be here. Thank you, Travis, for being here. Sally, I appreciate you. Karen Roscoe. And the list goes on and on and on. Thank you all for being here. Believe me, I notice every single person. I can't take the time to mention everybody. And it means a lot to myself, and it does to Lily too. She likes to read what people are asking and so forth. So thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. I can't thank you enough. Check out her book if that's your thing. If you're into forensic anthropology, it looks like if it's a field guide, it's a must have. And
it's a coffee table. It's a coffee table.
Right.
Book.
That's right. Get your employer to get you one because you need it. And until then, anything else, Teresa, that you want to leave them, or Lily, that you want to leave them with? I think we've covered so much.
Thank you for being here. Like we said, we could go on and on, but I just really
Yes.
appreciate having you have the platform, and thank you for having me. Thanks for reaching out and asking me. It's just weird and humbling to have somebody say, "Hey, you want to be on a podcast?" And I go, "Ooh."
Yeah. When I saw your background, I was like, yeah, I got to have her. So she's going to be, and you did not disappoint. Thank you, Joanne. I see that you're here too. It was another great episode. Tell your friends and family, let them know. And until next week, remember, there's also merch available to those that are watching this. You can check that out. Amanda, throw up that good picture. One of the viewers is actually making a bobblehead of me, which I'm really excited about. Believe me, I'm going to have that behind me. It is fun. I'm going to have that thing behind me. There it is. Whenever that thing's done, they've got it through the machine.
That's
My
great.
finger on there, a finger is a little jacked up, and I don't know what they're going to do with it, but I'm super excited about it. They're going to paint it. It's going to be awesome. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, check out my Detective Jason White Facebook page, because it's got the directions of how to go to that event that I'm going to be doing to benefit the Tulsa Police Department Museum. And like I said, every single red cent goes to them. And maybe I should have renegotiated that, but it's all about them. And that's what it's about. And so until next time, and Lily, have a great holiday.
Thanks.
and a great Christmas, and so cool. And I'm looking forward to going to Montana, and I'm sure I'm going to meet people that know you. So it'll be a great time.
I am teaching a class. I'm teaching a class in June, so it's in Kalispell. So if any of the homicide folks or death investigators or whatever, I still have a few openings. And so anyway, you can find it on the website. Anyways.
Great. Don't go away. Stay with us. I'm going to talk to you briefly when we go off air. And until next week, ladies and gentlemen, take us out, Amanda.